As the field of 2012 Republican presidential contenders takes shape, do conservatives have a dog in the hunt? Here to answer that is one of the nation's most prominent conservatives, Richard Viguerie. He is the chairman of conservativehq.com. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Viguerie.
My pleasure.
Well, you mentioned recently most conservatives are disappointed and sitting on the sidelines. Do you still feel that way with Herman Cain and Tim Pawlenty now in the race? And could either of them attract enough conservative votes to get the party nomination?
Well, right now, as you said, I and most all conservatives that I know are disappointed we don't have a stronger group of small government constitutional conservatives seeking the Republican presidential nomination. By the way, this will be the last year presidential election cycle that we'll see this. In 2016, 2020, there'll be a half a dozen significant conservative senators, governors, etc., that'll be seeking the nomination, but they're on the bench right now. Herman Cain and Michelle Bachmann are wonderful conservatives, for the principled conservatives, but they haven't demonstrated yet that they can be top-tier candidates. And so when you're looking at the top-tier candidates, conservatives don't see a small government principled conservative among them.
Now, what about Tim Pawlenty or Jon Huntsman?
Well, Tim Pawlenty is someone who is interestingly positioned right now that he could be everybody's default candidate. He kind of is in a position where very few people see him as their first or second choice, but most all elements of the Republican Party feel they can live with Pawlenty even though they would prefer someone else. So he might be the last person standing, actually, when it gets time to nominate someone, because he's just is the kind of default candidate for most all elements of the party. Jon Huntsman, though, is seen by all the conservatives that I know as a liberal Republican. He may be even more liberal than Mitt Romney.
Do you think Pawlenty has what it takes to defeat Obama?
Probably. I think that if the Republican nominee is able to articulate in a forceful, strong, decisive manner the issues, and they campaign on issues, and they're not content-free, that the Republican, I would think, would be favored going into the 2012 election. People want to fire Obama, and by 2012 they will really feel strongly, but they need to be comfortable with his alternative, and I think Tim Pawlenty, as well as others, will be able to satisfy that criteria.
Now, you've said that you're not exactly thrilled by former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. What hurts him more, the fact that he's somewhat of a liberal conservative, or the fact that he might not be able to overcome the resistance of evangelical Christians?
Well, it's not just evangelical Christians. It's all small government, principled, constitutional conservatives. Almost close to 100% oppose him because he is seen as a liberal Republican.
Former New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani is said to be entering the race. What do you think his chances are?
I'm tempted to say slim and none, but slim means he's got a chance. I think he has zero chance of getting the Republican nomination.
What about former House Speaker Newt Gingrich? A new Zogby poll finds his support dwindling considerably. How come, and where do you see his campaign going?
Conservatives for many years have had kind of a love-hate relationship with Newt Gingrich. There are days when he sounds just like a conservative, acts just like a conservative, and then the next day he will, move left on an issue. So he's all over the ballpark, and conservatives just really don't feel like they can trust Newt, that if he were president of the United States, that he would govern as a principled conservative. He has too long a history of reaching out to the other side and engaged in liberal activities.
Okay, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie or Senator Jim DeMint of South Carolina. Would you like to see either of them enter the race?
Well, Governor Chris Christie is an intriguing individual. We don't know a lot about it. We know his position on spending and the deficit and getting the unions, under control in New Jersey. And you know, a few issues, but for the most part, Chris Christie is a blank slate. So I don't think conservatives are going to be inclined to buy a pig in a poke, so to speak. We've done that too many times, and we perhaps learn more about Governor Christie. Perhaps we could take another look at him. But right now, I think he's kind of a blank slate, and conservatives want to know more before they would support a Christie nomination. Now, Senator Jim DeMint's a different situation. I think that if Senator Jim DeMint were to enter the race, he would garner the vast majority of conservative support overnight. He would almost clear the field for his candidacy, and I think that if Senator DeMint were to enter the race, he would electrify the conservative movement, much as Ronald Reagan did in 1976 and 1980, and I think he could be overnight the favorite for the nomination.
Now, if Sarah Palin were to jump into the race, would that excite the conservative base as it did in 2008?
Governor Sarah Palin is an asset to the conservative cause. I'm glad that she's involved in the public policy arena. I think that her strongest asset maybe is to articulate our positions. I think as a candidate, she could be very polarizing, and I'm not sure, you know, what type of campaign. If she runs a good, strong campaign, which I think she's capable of doing, she would be an asset.
Last question, Mr. Viguerie. Are you happy with the House GOP, and what impact will entitlements reform have on 2012?
Republicans' leadership in the House and the Senate has left a lot to be desired in recent years. Conservatives don't understand why the Republican leaders aren't more forceful, aren't more outspoken in their opposition to Barack Obama, to Harry Reid, to Nancy Pelosi. Most of the leadership in terms of opposing the Democrat agenda, starting with Obamacare, cap and trade, card check, spending, the stimulus, TARP, most of that came from conservatives who don't hold public office. Conservatives in talk radio, cable television, the internet, conservative organizations, conservative leaders at the national, state, local level. The Republicans in the Congress mostly follow the leadership of those conservatives who don't hold public office. So I've been of the opinion for a long time that conservatives are not going to get to the political promised land until we get new leaders. And I think that as the years go by, we're going to see a lot of the new conservatives recently elected assume more of a leadership position. But we've been very disappointed with the leadership that we've had in Congress for recent years.
All right, Richard Viguerie, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight.
My pleasure. Thank you.